yours to hear that you are less than people inherently because of the color of your skin?
Oh, wow.
Students at Wilson High have formed a group called Common Ground to encourage interaction and discussion among students of different cultural backgrounds. Jeff Custer.
Okay, so I love that she said, isn't it even worse to hear that you're inherently, less than other people? And that's kind of the idea that they put forth in this book, that, oh, well, I'm inherently less than because you expect me to be automatically. And so kids won't try. Kids feel like they're not heard. Kids, in particular in Steele's portion of the book, he mentions that he went back to, where he graduated from. And kids said, we don't hear enough of our music, and we don't see enough people that look like us, and we don't get taught in a way that helps us understand. And so I just thought that was super interesting as well. But that common ground at the end, that students have formed a common ground. What has to also happen then is that teachers have to form this common ground to, like Emily said, get to know their students. And it's not about diminishing the institution completely or completely diminishing the students' culture, where they come from, but to find a common ground that kind of incorporates that cultural aspect into the institution. So Asa Hilliard III was born in Galveston, Texas. He actually died in 2007, but his grandfather and his father were both principals at high schools, and he has a BA from the University of Denver, and he has a master's degree and a doctorate in education. So his portion is entitled No Mystery, Closing the Achievement Gap Between Africans and Excellence. So he doesn't use the term African American, he just uses the term African, so that's why that between Africans and excellence. So first he talks about norms and gaps. Norms are identified as the mainstream white culture. That's the standard. So when we test our students, we always say, well, we have so many white students that scored, above average on a test, and we have so many black students that scored, blah, blah, blah. We say African American or students of color. So that could also include the Latino Americans and,
Asian.
everyone else who's just not in the white category. So he says that's an issue. You have to reevaluate the way we use language and set norms, because we say that if the white European culture is the norm, then how will our students ever, all of our African American students ever achieve that? So then he talks about gaps in intelligence and achievement, which he calls false gaps, gaps that don't really exist, because the norms that we have set are norms that we really shouldn't have to abide by. And one example he gives, he illuminates that a teacher blamed her student for not understanding which approach to use in like a geometric proof, and she should have used like some kind of linear equality or linear equation or something like that. And the teacher told her to give reasoning on lines next to the problem or something like that. And he said that the teacher blamed her for being wrong. Instead, the teacher should have realized that when you say give a reason, that human reason is not always linear. Like if she doesn't have experience or enough experience with proofs, if she doesn't understand the proof, then there's no way she could give an actual answer. So instead of like Emily said, we can't really come from this at an outside-in approach. We can't wait for the standards, which, in speech, the first, I think the first standard of the language, ELA, the English Language Arts, says that, our students have to demonstrate an ability in grammar and the standard American English. And students can't do that if they don't have experience with it. There's a reason that we have teachers, and that's what kind of piggybacking off of what Emily already said. So we can't use like decoy issues, as he Mr. Hilliard says, can't wait on the state test, you can't wait on funding, you can't wait on, you have to learn how to approach your students with what you have. And that's all based on quality instruction. So, how does any of this literacy and all of that apply to myself and a Generation S student? Well, I'll go with my student first. The first time I met him, well, the second time I met with him, we were working on he's a 7th grader, so they're working on introductions to a paper, and he kept writing T-O-O instead of T-O on his paper. And I was thinking, that's a literacy issue. If he's not reading, when I was younger, I didn't understand why people had such an issue with homophones like T-O-O and T-O and T-W-O, because to me, just automatically, they mean different things. But if you're reading and you're not reading for comprehension, then there's no way you're ever going to distinguish those just by hearing somebody say the words. If that makes sense. Also, there's one example I wanted to give you guys from competing theories of group achievement. So my teacher, that just meant that you have an idea of what a particular group of people can accomplish, what they can achieve. I had a teacher, there are some people in here who had this teacher also, so I won't mention their name, but I had a teacher here at State who automatically assumed that I grew up just vastly different from everyone else in the classroom. I was embarrassed, I didn't know how to react. I did not know how to react. They were embarrassed for me. She even went so far as to call me a black exclamation point because I was the only black person in the classroom. And I think she meant it as a compliment, but also, unconsciously, you're saying that because I'm black, I grew up in a very different environment than the rest of my peers. I mean, I was a military child, so I moved a lot. I got to go all over the world, and that was fun for me. So if that's what you mean by different, sure, that's what I did, My mom got to go all over the world. I got to go with her, that was fun for me. So I think it's just, instead of walking into a classroom, one black kid, a lot of white kids, how are you different? And automatically assuming that student is so vastly different from, don't take that approach. Instead, get to know your students, know who they are. Don't just assume that, based on this, oh, they're illiterate, or they can't read, they will never be able to read. Even if they did grow up in that preconceived notion environment that you have, don't approach them that way. Approach them with the positive mindset, that kind of thing. So I'm going to round it up here, just ways that after reading this book, even being African American myself, I know a lot of the things that existed with achievement gaps and intelligence gaps and cultural differences and all of that kind of stuff, but it really opened my eyes because I was like, that makes sense. Why does an achievement gap really exist? Is it really a gap? Are the norms really what we should abide by, kind of thing? So just ways that I'm thinking, before class check-ins, when your students are coming in, see how they are, have a quote of the day for each class, let the students get involved. So when they're involved, you know more about them, you know more about how to approach, how to teach them, African American students specifically. I know you guys have seen the video of the guy who in elementary school has a million different handshakes, but each handshake is unique. You guys have seen that? Mm-hmm. What?
I have.
Does this look familiar? End of a long day, the kids are asleep, you finally get them up.
Okay.
And there's another teacher, it's a white woman. She does the same exact thing. It's beautiful, I love it. Because some of the movements that they make are...
Love it.
Yeah, I do too. And
he remembers everyone. Look at him.
I always forgot.
How would I? Oh.
movements are directly related to culture, the music that they listen to, and dances that they do. So I just thought that was one way that teachers are learning, you know, adapting to what their students need. Just that check-in in the morning to kind of get them pepped up before they walk in the classroom, because you know, first thing in the morning, you don't really want to be at school, but you're here and I'm here, so let's make the best of it kind of thing. And if you notice, the majority of those students were African American. And like I was saying, the movements, the gestures that a lot of them were making are directly related to a lot of African American music, a lot of the dances that are out just recently. But students can relate to that kind of stuff. So even just that little bit kind of helps you know who your students are. And then there's vocabulary, which is a website that helps with understanding. It's not just for English language arts. You can use it for math, history, science, whatever you want. And then there's Thug Notes, which I think is amazing, because there's this guy who, I guess, gives you a summary and an analysis of something really complicated. So Shakespeare, kids don't always get Shakespeare when they read it, but if you read it and then have them listen to or watch the Thug Notes analysis version of it, then, you know, it puts it in their terms. It uses the African American vernacular and they get it. This is a quote from one of the narratives by Malcolm X. A school is not four walls and a roof. It is whenever you get one willing person to teach and one who's willing to learn. And then the idea is that both are learning here. You know, we both have to learn from one another. James Banks cites from the multicultural education that experts in the field that a major goal of multicultural education, as stated by specialists in the field, is to reform the school and other educational institutes that students form diverse racial, ethnic, and social class groups. And, you know, we can't do that until we learn who our students are, find this common ground, and learn how to teach them in a way that they understand.